All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we're going to be talking about Week 4 preview, 2022 season, Bears, Giants, and I am joined by Fly Guy Carl from Giant Zone. How are you doing?
Doing great, Andy. How are you, buddy?
Well, I'm getting ready for this. I don't want to call it a heavyweight matchup, so maybe it's, and I don't know if it's a welterweight matchup.
Middleweight?
Either. Middleweight. We aspire to be a middleweight matchup. We'll just say that, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at this game, obviously, this is not a game a marquee game that everyone kind of looks in the season, the weekend, everyone kind of puts their eyes attention to. But for a Bears fan and for Giants fan, this can be an important game. So I definitely want to break down some of the keys to this game. And obviously, I'm glad that you're here, and always love connecting with you on podcasts.
Yeah, always enjoy working with you. I know this is our second time, and it's been great. I hope we can continue.
So when you look at this game, what are some things that maybe you're excited about, and what are some things that maybe scare you a little bit?
I'm excited about the way our defense has been playing this year. Our defense has really been strong. I thought even Monday night, we did lose, wasn't our best game defensively, but they did still show some promise. I guess overall, Andy, what I'm really excited about is the mentality of this team. This team has a no quit attitude. And for Giants fans can relate, is that, the previous years, our first two games against Tennessee and Carolina, those are games that we would have found ways to lose. And instead, we kept fighting, they kept scrapping, and they kept working, and they won both of those games. And for 3 quarters Monday night, as poorly as they played, that was probably their worst game of the season, they were still in the game. So, and that comes from the coaching staff. We're really excited about this new coaching staff, this new regime, and the way that their attitude is permeated through the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the season, starting, and from everything from last year, I looked at this game as a very winnable game for the Bears. But now when I look at it, I mean, there's some things that kind of worry me, especially, going, I went to the Bears Texans game, and there's a lot that the Bears kind of need to clean up, and they did win that game, but it was a rough win. So when you look at, I guess, my first question before we kind of get into some keys and everything is, when you look at your quarterback, Daniel Jones, are you positive or, happy about maybe his progression so far?
And, I got to go back for a minute. It's, as Giant fans, this game is a game that we all looked at as a game we should win too.
So, yeah.
Jay, yeah. But to your question, look, Daniel Jones so far this season has been playing better. He's making better decisions with the ball. He threw a very bad interception week 1 against Tennessee. And then he threw one Monday night, but the receiver slipped coming out of his cut, and Diggs made a really nice play to secure that ball. So I really don't put that on Daniel Jones. I don't even put Monday night's loss on Daniel Jones. He was moving the pocket. He was running well. He was making good decisions, protecting the ball. So in as much as the offense has been sputtering, for lack of a better word, I don't blame it all on him. He is there room for improvement? Yes. And do I think he has that it factor to get the big contract next season? My gut tells me no. As much as I want him to succeed, and I hope he does, I don't think he has what it takes to warrant that contract, and I think we'll have a new quarterback next year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, make sure I have the stats right, 186.7 yards per game, 3 touchdowns. So, it doesn't wow you. But when you look at a quarterback, an offensive scheme and coaching is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's made a big difference. He's gotten to the point where we can at least call him now a game manager.
Mm-hmm.
But again, does he does he take that next step? I don't. As much as I want him to, I just don't know. And I think a lot of it's mental. I honestly think a lot of it's mental. I think he's just been beaten into submission, and there's been so much going on around him that he was forced to try to make so many plays that I just and now, how are you going to accurately grade him? Because right now he's running for his life almost every play,
Mm-hmm.
and or he's down, and then the question is, well, what about our wide receiver group? And so it's still it's just not a good situation, a favorable situation.
I want to get back. I'm going to get back to Daniel Jones a little bit, but my guy, the Bills Beat podcast. Obviously, there's a connection here with Brian Daboll. He says, do you see do you see the Giants in the playoffs in a weaker NFC this year?
I don't. As a diehard Giants fan, I'd love it, but I think we were all drinking the Kool-Aid after we beat Carolina. 2-0. I don't think anybody expected it. But we all need to remember it's year one of a rebuild. It's year one with these new systems, and it's year one of these coaches and this leadership still putting this roster together to the way they want it. So as much as I would like them to be in the playoffs, I don't see it.
Yeah, especially when you look at the Eagles' progression in where they're at. Maybe they tail off, but the Giants, they're going to have a tough road. Obviously, next week with the Packers we talked about as well, so that's going to be tough. We'll see what the Cowboys are when Dak comes back and all that, but it's going to be interesting. When you look at just a road to the playoffs and just being realistic. You want to see your team in the playoffs, and when you have a new coaching system and you see some positive, that's great, but you can't just kind of say, okay, yep, we're there, because there's a long road ahead.
I mean, look at Buffalo. Great team to kind of resemble us to. These guys were in Buffalo before they came to the Giants, and not for nothing, but it's year 6 now. Buffalo's been to the playoffs, and they look really good this year. And matter of fact, I picked Buffalo to win the Super Bowl this year. But again, it's year 6. So for us to even expect the playoffs in year 1, I don't think it's realistic.
Well, yeah, I mean, and obviously here's the thing that, McDermott and Dable to get the Bills to the playoffs in year 1, but the Giants don't have Josh Allen, and fair enough. I mean, we can look back at some of Josh Allen's stats in his first couple of years as well. But he had that it factor, and you're still trying to figure that out with Daniel Jones. And I guess my question too, when you look at Daniel Jones, his progression, does he remind you of Eli at all? I mean, in kind of stature, in just how he responds to things, or how does he compare to maybe Eli when Eli was starting out?
That's a tough question, and Eli's going to be a Hall of Famer. And to compare Daniel Jones to Eli Manning, I don't think that's a fair comparison. Eli took a little bit of time to get it right. I agree. But again, this is Daniel Jones, third head coach, third or fourth offensive system. So, and I think Eli Manning had better weapons around him each and every year. They kept improving the roster around him. So I think when you factor all of that in together, it's just two different situations that you really can't compare them.
Yeah, in a similar thing that I'm in as a Bears fan is quarterback and trying to figure things out. And when you look at Justin Fields, it was tough as a Bears fan because I'm where you're at, knowing that yes, it's a rebuild, but it's tough in game when you look at it and see some of the struggles, and as a fan, to say, okay, he should be doing this, he should, and compare him to some of these other quarterbacks, and so. There's one thing, the fan sentiment and everybody kind of wanting him to just take over and do this. But then there's the other thing that we know, looking at the organization, they're 100% behind him, and they know that it's a teaching thing. And so when you compare Fields and Jones, they're probably at two different spots though, because Fields gets more time. Jones, this is it. Like, I mean, can you envision? Or I guess my question is, what would it take this year, Daniel Jones, his performance to lead him to a different contract
You
with the
know,
Giants?
that as that gets discussed so much amongst Giant fans, and there's a couple. I don't think you could put wins to it. I see so many people saying 10 wins, 12 wins. I don't think you could put that number to it. Okay, I don't. Um, I think if he's moving the ball consistently, where the offense seems to smooth out, and you get an offense that runs, that can consistently move the ball, that can make the big play when they need to on a consistent basis, where they don't get bogged down. I think that's part of it. Does he show that he can lead this team? See, here's the biggest thing that I would like to see out of Daniel Jones. So he says the right things, and I don't question his heart, but he's not the guy, or he hasn't shown me he's the guy where he's going to say, "Hey guys, just get on my back. I'm going to lead us."
Mm.
And I think in this league, you need that. The way this league has changed is becoming an offensive and passing league. I think you really need that. And look what Lamar Jackson's doing this year. He bet on himself.
Mm-hmm.
No agent. Hey, I'm going to make you pay me, and he's delivering. And
So
I don't see Daniel Jones doing that.
and the difficult thing about that is, when you look at it, the coaching stability, it's hard as a player to be the leader when you're switching offenses,
Right.
you're switching coaches, and that's the thing with Lamar Jackson. He has all of that talent, and he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and but he's had that stability. And when you look at it, as a Giants fan, even looking at Fields, his development, he just need that stability and to continue that growth process. If you don't have that stability, it's hard to really. I mean, it stunts your growth.
It does, and you bring up a great point. One of the things I wanted to kind of allude to myself, these guys didn't draft him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's big. Now, look, the owner came out in the preseason and said, we failed him, and both Shane and Daboll came out and said, look, we are going to build this system around him, and that all sounds good, but
Mm-hmm.
again, they didn't draft this guy. And so they have not set out what their criteria is for him to get that contract to come back. For all we know, look, financially, it made sense to let him come back this year and start as well. And that's a serious consideration. It just financially made sense. Next year, there is the financial commitment would be huge. And I don't know if the return on the investment is going to warrant that contract.
Well, and you look at it, and I'm not sure from a fan perspective, but we look at a team perspective. When you change coaches and all of the Giants have been through, you almost get a little bit more leash to kind of like wait on these things,
Right.
and so as a fan perspective, yes, we want to see our teams win, but you want to see it done the right way, and you can't just kind of say expect, especially with an NFL franchise, it just to be okay. Now we're good. Everything is going to be ripe for a Super Bowl run. We just can't do that.
Right. So, I don't know. I'm sure they've got their boxes that they're trying to check off to see if he comes back or not. I just don't know. It's a long season. We're only in week 4 here now, so anything can happen. Hopefully he stays healthy. That's probably one thing is can he stay healthy?
Yeah, the health is a one thing is huge as well. And talking about quarterbacks, Justin Fields, it's obviously huge on Twitter, on radio, and just talking about how the coaching staff doesn't trust him and all that. And I don't know where your stance is on it, but I had to take a step back and say, okay, yeah, I mean, they're not passing a lot, but when you look at, quarterbacks being trusted to lead a franchise, and you alluded to it as well, it's more than just about the number of passes. It's, can they manage a game? Can they, do this or that? And when I look at it as well, there's so many good, obviously takes on it. And I really liked what Trent Dilfer had to say about some of these quarterbacks, well, all these quarterbacks, they are the man in college. They're asked to, be the guy in a high flying offenses. And that's the way they get to the NFL because they have all of that talent. And Justin Fields was that at Ohio State, and he had all of that talent around him, all these wide receivers around him. He was asked to be the guy. And then when you get into the NFL, especially with the new coaching staff, they have a different role for you. And at this time, he's still learning, so he's not asked to be, the guy. He's asked to kind of manage a little bit and learn on the fly, learn as he goes.
Yeah.
And so what Trent Dilfer, said that, and because he did this as well, is that when a game isn't called for you, when it's not, okay, you're going to be the guy to take this team on the back. Some of these quarterbacks kind of sit back a little bit and it's tough for them to kind of take a back seat to the game plan.
It is. And the one thing about Daniel Jones, and my co-host on the Giant Zone, Steve, points this out very accurately, is growing up, Daniel Jones was always a basketball player. He got into football late. He went to Duke as opposed to Justin Fields at Ohio State. So I understand the expectations and the pressure that Justin Fields is facing. In New York, the media capital and all that pressure as well on Daniel Jones. And I'm sure that takes a toll. So I just, that's why I really question if he's that guy that he can just say to these guys, all right, guys, put the ball in my hands. We're going to win this game. And I'm going to get, and that's what they need. That's the mentality they need. I don't know if he's got it.
So, assuming that maybe he's not, and when you look at this draft, which upcoming QB in the next draft would you like to see and fit that Giant scheme? Obviously, this is from the Bills Beat podcast.
So, look, Bryce Young, sure. But the Giants, I hope, are not going to be drafting in a position to get a Bryce Young. There's one quarterback that kind of flies under the radar for me that I like and I've kind of quietly been watching, and that's Will Levis down in Kentucky. I think he's got all the tools. I think he's got the mental makeup. He seems to have that quiet, silent leader attitude about him. And he's got a little swagger to him, which I'm okay with.
That's kind of Eli, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
That's kind of Eli, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so and that's who he reminds me of to a degree. So that's someone that I'm watching that personally I kind of like and I think would be a great fit in this offense.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I had a chance to watch him. I'm an Iowa fan, so I had a chance to watch him in the bowl game, and he just, tore Iowa up. Obviously, when you look at that, that's what you want to see them performing on the big stage. And so when you look at this game, what are some keys for the Giants that you see in them beating the Bears this week?
So I'll give you three as I've thought about this. Number one, they've got to be able to run the ball. With some of the struggles we're seeing in the passing game, that takes a hell of a lot of pressure off the passing game. If the Giants can successfully run the ball, pick up yardage, not put us in second and long and third and long all the time. And that also keeps the defense off balance. So I think that's number one. Number two, they've got to be able to pass block. We saw it glaringly Monday night. The interior offensive line struggled. And as much as I believe that Evan Neal is going to be a very good right tackle in this league for a long time. I firmly believe that the Giants have their bookend tackles in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. But you can still clearly see that Evan Neal is still adjusting to the speed of the game and the footwork. And I think the coaches need to give him some help, either shadow him and put somebody else next to him. There was a couple times Monday night they put our rookie tight end, Daniel Bellinger, against him to chip the rush, and Bellinger missed and he whiffed. So I think they've got to give him some help there. So I think on offense, we need to be able to run the ball and we need to be able to pass block. Defensively, we got to find a pass rush. We haven't had it yet in 3 games. Thibodeau is now back. Ojulari is now back. So our 2 big edge rushers are now back. Hopefully Leonard Williams comes back. And I got to tell you, he makes a hell of a lot of money, and a lot of people complain about him. But boy, did we miss him Monday night against Dallas. I mean, we could not stop the run against Dallas. And, you guys got a nice little running game going. And I'd hate to see that again, because then that puts pressure on the secondary. And our secondary is, they've been playing good, but that was always a question coming into the season. And so they need to be able to put a pass rush on Justin Fields. They need to be able to stop the run. They may even need to shadow Justin Fields. It seems mobile running quarterbacks always give us fits, as do backup quarterbacks, as we all saw Monday night.
Well, yeah, I mean, just kind of talking about the offensive line. I mean, we've had issues with guards and centers, and a lot of pressure up the middle, and obviously that has pushed Justin Fields out, and he hasn't had a clean pocket. He hasn't felt comfortable. So that is definitely something that the Giants could do with this offensive line, is they're just really trying to adjust and really find their footing as a unit.
Yeah, I would look. Any good coaching staff sees another team's weakness and exploits it. I mean, Dallas did it to us Monday night. They ran the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm looking at. I'm able to watch all the games on Sundays, and so I've been watching the Bears, and this is 2 years in a row where Justin Fields has taken his lumps.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope we can continue that.
So when you look at, are there any, those are the 3 keys then when you look at it, running the ball, pass blocking, and defensive pass rush then?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I agreed. When I looked at the Bears keys, obviously I did talk about, ball security, I think is going to be important. Obviously, Justin Fields had the 2 interceptions. One was just, egregious, but that's part of kind of learning his wide receiver, route. And then they were able to, force the pick and the fumbles, versus the Texans. And I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to be putting the ball on the turf like Dameon Pierce did.
Right.
So, I mean, that's going to be something. And, if when with the defense, I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be making those bad picks. I mean, that's going to be important. So, number one, and I look at both of these offenses, and they're not prolific offenses, right? So another thing is going to be the special teams and field position battle, and I think that's going to be important, with the Bears, especially being, running team. I think that's going to be important for them as well, just to kind of try to control control the clock, and really control the game as well. So that's number 2. I also put the Giants pass defense, and part of it too, because we have a young secondary. But now, obviously, without Sterling Shepard, and there's not a lot of firepower on the wide receivers, I'm not necessarily as worried about it as I am some teams, right?
Sure.
But when you look at, and I'm sure you watched the Houston game, there wasn't a lot of pressure. I think they maybe had the 1 sack, and it was just they weren't getting to the quarterback. And when I looked at that game, and being there, I just felt like Houston was controlling the game, after the Bears took 10-0 lead. And then the Bears, the Texans seemed to be controlling, just what they want to do with different schemes with Pierce, and then things kind of changed a little bit, but it was tough. They need to get more pressure when the Giants are passing. So that was number 3. And obviously for defensive pressure on the running game and that as well. Because I mean, if Saquon Barkley's gonna, Saquon Barkley is ton better than Damian Pierce, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's healthy.
Yes, he's healthy. That's when you look at that as well. So, and my other thing obviously kind of lends into the Bears' balanced offense, and it's no secret that the Bears haven't been able to pass, and a lot of that maybe is on the line, but a lot of it is on Luke Getsy and Justin Fields, and so hopefully, and also, I've been a big proponent of Darnell Mooney and hoping that he can be a number 1. I'm not sure. The biggest thing is like his separation. I mean, when you look at wide receivers, I mean, Giants, like what wide receivers do you have and on your offensive side of the ball that can kind of get that separation and get open?
We don't.
Yeah.
To be very frank, we don't. To this point, we haven't seen any of them. I mean, Kenny Golladay, we're paying him $72 million, and he's pretty much been MIA. We all expected, I think a lot of us expected that when we signed Golladay, we were getting the second coming of Plaxico Burress. And it just hasn't happened. And all right, and a lot of people say, well, he's not that kind of receiver where he creates separation. He's the kind of receiver that you got to throw the ball and let him go up and get it. Well, you know what? He didn't fight for any balls last year, and he's hardly been in the field this year. So what is he?
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. You want a wide receiver that's going to fight for the ball, and especially if they can't get open, and that's one thing I feel like Mooney was able to do that last year. He was able to get open, but you never know. Maybe it was because they had Allen Robinson as well, so that's been a deficiency there. I mean, you want your receivers to be able to get open. The other thing, you want your quarterbacks to be able to recognize NFL open and hit the spots. And there were a few obviously open receivers, and that's part of Justin Fields' progression. And I'm not sure kind of where you're at as far as, in game, as opposed to kind of after the week, you kind of sit back, because in the game, yes, you want to win. You want them to do this, this, and this. But like when you sit back and realize like, okay, it hurts when they lose, it stinks, but it's part of the learning process. And if I can see a little bit, from Fields, even though we're deficient on the wide receivers, if I can see him, there was Matt Bowen is another fantastic former Iowa guy, fantastic analyst on, he's on The Score. I believe he's on ESPN as well, former college defensive back. He talked about quarterbacks resetting the throwing window. If they are able to, if things break down, then you kind of move to the side and you reset the throwing window and kind of learning those things. And that's what I'm hoping from Fields. I'm sure you're kind of hoping maybe to see a little bit from Jones, but I think that's going to be important because they have to be balanced. I mean, teams are just going to be keying on the run. And then my last point here then is, I mean, I was there, at the game in Montgomery. It didn't look good, and yes, Herbert looked great, but if the Giants really start keying on the run, and I'm guessing they're probably going to be daring the Justin Fields and the Bears to throw, right?
I would think so. Again, given the Bears' troubles up front, I could probably see that happening. Wink has been very good at scheming things for this defense and with this defense. And, you're starting to see a lot of our free safeties playing up in the box, and they're contributing and they're making tackles, and it's been really paying off. So I think Wink is going to try to disguise some things and pretty much say, hey, Justin, beat us. I do. That's been his trademark so far, and it's been working. But you mentioned something about the quarterbacks. There were numerous plays against Carolina in week 2 for the Giants where Kadarius Toney was wide open and just never got the ball. There was a couple plays like that. And then week 3, Monday night, he had a play that where Darius Slayton was wide open. Never saw him. So, I find this game very interesting, Andy, and I'll tell you why. I think these two teams are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Shaky on the offensive line, questions about the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, good running backs, defense, pressure, coverage. Although I like your young secondary. I thought you guys, you drafted 2 great secondary players, first 2 rounds, your first 2 picks. I thought they were great picks. I like them both. Love the kid out of Penn State. Love him.
Yeah, Jaquan Brisker, and I do as well. And it made sense for where the draft felt. It just made sense where this team is at as well, and where the division is at, where the league is at. Yeah. You have to be able to defend the pass in this league. I mean, you can, and this happened a lot versus Houston. It was a bend, don't break defense. And Houston was able to move the ball on the Bears, and they were moving it up and down. But then, the Bears were able to get, turnovers or stop them when it needed. And so if you've got that secondary that can really cover some receivers and listen, Houston doesn't have world beaters at wide receiver, but Nico Collins, and I can think of the other guy now off the top of my head. They have some decent wide receivers that were getting open, and with Pierce, I really like Pierce kind of going forward if he can get the fumbles figured out. But if you have if you don't have that secondary, I mean, you're toast in the NFL.
It puts pressure on the rest of the defense.
It does, and especially so the Bears need to really improve that pass rush and everything. But this it's almost like putting the secondary to the fire right away. I mean, they have to kind of learn on the fly and grow, and that's good. So I like that as well. Bill's Beat Podcast had another question here. Is Herbert going to take over lead running back duties when no, absolutely not. Herbert is fantastic. Maybe next year, maybe Montgomery doesn't get that extra contract, but not this year. Montgomery is just a different guy. Herbert is great. He was able to hit some good holes and make some good cuts and everything, but Montgomery is just that much better and talent wise. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Carl.
I've always respected Montgomery. He's very quietly flies under the radar, but you consistently get a great effort out of him. He's always a threat for 1,000 yards every season. And I believe he catches the ball out of the backfield too, does he not?
He does very well at that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that's kind of what, but you never hear him mentioned as one of the top backs, but man, he can do a lot of damage. You can't sleep on him. And Herbert, I mean, small sample size, but boy, you got to love what you see out of him so far.
Well, yeah, and so that's always the question too, is matchup wise.
Right.
I was happy to see them run all over the Texans last week, but it is the Texans, and the Texans were horrible at pass defense or horrible at rush defense. So when you get against some of these teams that are good at rush defense, what's going to happen? And if they haven't established the pass right with Fields, it's going to be a long game. And so I like Herbert, and yes, it is a small sample size. I think that, I'm not ready to say he's going to be a top guy. Montgomery is just, that much better, but yeah, I mean, health is one thing. I mean, it's huge. I mean, availability is always important. And so obviously Bill's Beat Podcast agrees that, if he just stay healthy, I think he's talking about Montgomery here. So,
I mean, that's been a lot of the question that we've had to deal with Saquon Barkley.
Absolutely.
I mean, 2018 Offensive Rookie of the Year, we got our guy, and then the injuries, 2019, 2020, then last year coming back from the injury, that's a 2-year recovery. We all know it. So, but I mean, he looks great right now. He's dedicated himself to. He wants to be the guy that says, give me the ball. I'll lead us. And right now he's doing that. So if he can stay healthy, sky's the limit.
Yeah, and that's so interesting that you need to have those type of players on both sides of the ball. You want to ideally you want to have that at quarterback, but running
Yeah.
back, I mean, that's good as well. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah. But again, a lot of that comes down to the offensive line.
It does.
So, he can want it, he could be it, but if he's got five guys on him every time he touches the ball, how much can he do?
Grandpa O'Shaughnessy here. It must be former Bears tight end O'Shaughnessy. Not much depth on the Bears. I agree, and that's when you look at the team, a lot of that goes with Ryan Pace, what he had done and not done in the draft, and all of that as well. And this really is a rebuild. And when you're honest about your team, when I'm honest about the Bears, I mean, it was just horrible. From the ownership on up, they just didn't know
Mm,
how to organize things. Now they actually have a general manager that knows football. They have an
mhm.
assistant general manager, so they've got something in place now, and they're starting to kind of. They've really, when you look at their draft picks, they've really kind of hit on some good players to kind of continue to build. But that's the thing. It takes time to
Yeah.
build a winner, and as fans, you want to see a winner right away. But it takes time, and yeah, you're right. There is not as much depth, and so that's what we're looking for to continue to grow. And I liked what what the Bears did on in the draft day. They didn't reach for a wide receiver. When they clear, it was a clear need. Now, here's the question, and maybe this is for the Giants as well. The Bears are reportedly going to be active in the trade market for wide receivers, and obviously will try to be active in the free agency market. When you look at wide receivers, there aren't a lot of really top end wide receivers, I don't believe, that are going to be free agents, and so how do you then attract some of those wide receivers to your team? I mean, what are your thoughts on your wide receivers for the Giants, going forward, maybe even in next year?
It's very funny that you bring this up because just this morning I saw something on Twitter actually in which expect the Bears to be a player for Kenny Galladay. I just saw it this morning.
Uh,
Rams, Bears, Falcons, and Packers. Um, hey Andy, make me an offer. Right. That's how I feel right now because of the way Kenny Galladay's been. Um, and I think here's one other piece that you mentioned. How do you attract some of these guys? I think you can attract some of these guys because of who your quarterback is.
mhm.
Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Okay. If I am a wide receiver right now, looking for the next contract, okay, and I've got the Giants and the Bears both offering me similar money. Well, where are you going to go? I go to Justin Fields right now, and I'm a Giant fan, and I love Daniel Jones. I do. I hope he's the guy. I hope he turns around. My gut says he's not, but I hope he does. But again, you know, Justin Fields is attractive
Well, yeah, and so I
to
as a
play
Bears
with. I
fan,
mean,
as a Bear, as a Bears fan, I want to think that as well. But with how much they're passing as well, I mean, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot that goes into
yeah,
some of these free agents as well. But when I look at that, I mean, you asked that question, I would say another option would be they would want to go to the Giants because of the platform that they have, right, in New York. You know,
yeah,
um, when you win in New York, it's different. Although, it's some of these quote unquote flagship, franchises like the Bears, if they were to win in Chicago, they're going to be talked about forever. Look,
right,
we still talk about 85.
right,
That's,
exactly,
you know,
exactly.
and so that's going to be huge as well. So there's a lot of things that go into it. The Bears are going to have the money. Um, uh, hope they do and pray they do not go after Galladay, because that's the last thing the Bears need, is to go after a retread that has not proven. And they did that with Byron Pringle and all of that. And so they need a top end wide receiver. They need to get him in the draft. If and my hope, and I was on my Freezing Four podcast last night. We talked about and a Packer guy asking about, do I wish the Bears lose? And no, I don't. But I understand it. If they lose, and I look at the schedule, and it's just a brutal schedule. Kind of, let me see if I can pull it up here. I don't see the Bears winning many of these games. I think the Lions with their firepower. I think Amon Rob St. Brown is out this week, but he gets healthy. When the Lions are going to be tough out. So when I look at this season as a whole, I don't see wins, which is tough. So knowing that and knowing where we're at, if the Bears are high, in the draft, picking high in the draft, I'm okay with that, because then I know, that maybe they can trade back, maybe they can get some other picks and get that top end wide receiver that they just have to pair with Mooney. And here, let's see, Bill's Beat also said Galladay is a retread at best, right? He is just not there. And Bill's Beat also was asked
business.
open for business, I'm sure. Yeah. And so here's another question. Do you think the Bears would draft another QB? Well, this kind of goes to your point as well, Carl, from before. Justin Fields was not drafted by this regime. Now I think he's got all the talent, and they are clearly teaching him in game. If you look at some of the footage, in game, they believe in him. Yes, it's possible they could. I don't think they will, because this team has so many needs, that if they're that high in the draft and there's a team that really wants one of the quarterbacks, they're going to trade back. And that would be the smartest thing that the Bears have done in I don't know how many years. Ryan Pace tried to trade up to get a quarterback he wasn't even sure about, right? So if the Bears
traded with us to get Justin Fields, as a matter of fact.
So that was a good move. That was a surprising move. That was a good move. But the Mitchell Trubisky one was just but that was kind of a desperation move that they knew that they needed a quarterback, because we know in the NFL that's what we need. Every team. I mean, that's the most important position. Right. And I was to say, Grandpa O'Shaughnessy had a comment here. Let's see what your thoughts are. Obviously, the Bears are thin at running back plus bad offensive line, which equals no playoffs. I don't expect the playoffs for the Bears.
Yeah. Again, we're in the same boat. And again, the similarities between our two teams are just there. When you really break it down, new front office, new coach, right? New systems. Here's the biggest difference between Justin Fields and Daniel Jones. It's year 2 for Justin Fields. We're in year 4 of Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's big. Year 4 and still asking these questions. And then, to your question about wide receivers, there's a lot of people within the Giant fan base that are bring back Odell. That's not happening.
Mm-mm.
First of all, he's going to have his pick of where he can go when he's healthy. Right now, he's not playing for like another month. He's not going to help us now. We need to get to that next month. But, at the end of the game, you saw Sterling Shepard go down with an injury, a non-contact turf injury. That turf is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way Odell Beckham's going to come back to MetLife Stadium and play on that turf. He's not going to do it after rehabbing an ACL.
And you look at, honestly, where the teams are, because I've heard, some people want the Bears to sign Odell as well, but there's no way that would be an old regime thing. Let's go out and get a top, free agent for a little bit. No, let's wait. And that's kind of like putting, a Band-Aid on,
something. Shotgun wound.
Exactly. And,
right.
And speaking of, I don't know if Grandpa has been, drinking, but he says, it's Giants division. He loves the coach there. So,
well, look, tell Grandpa I love the positivity, and I just made a new friend with Grandpa, but too premature to say it's their division. I mean, Philadelphia just looks very good right now. Yeah, he's exactly right. The Eagles are a lot of trouble. The Eagles are a handful right now, and look, we didn't beat Dallas either. So right now, I'd say we're the third best team in the division. So the wins are going to come. It's too early.
I don't usually toot my own horn, but I did talk about it. Was actually on a podcast with the Cowboys media member. I did talk about before the draft that that Jalen Hurts could be in the MVP consideration. Now it's a long season, right? But he's definitely showing that
Cool.
that he with that talent around him, and we talked about that with Fields as well. I mean, everyone's mad. You got to surround a quarterback with talent. It takes time, and Jalen Hurts now has AJ Brown. He's got that that talent. Grandpa, obviously, he has. It is a coin flip, and I feel like with any quarterback, it is coin flip, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But you got those that are out there proving it. I mean, look at Justin Herbert. What is it, year 3 for him? And he's going to win Super Bowls. He's going to win Super Bowls.
See, everyone says that, right? But he's not winning though, right? That's the thing. Like, I think it's
Because they're
easy.
poorly coached.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I agree.
They're terribly coached. But
Well,
let's see.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so let's go ahead and just predictions for this Sunday. What are your thoughts on the score and the winner of this game?
23-17 Giants.
Okay, so you think they're going to basically control the clock and everything, or tell me a little bit more about that.
Obviously low scoring. I think they're going to pound Saquon, which I think is going to help the passing game. I think they're going to. I expect to see Daniel Jones continue to make good decisions. I think you're going to see a lot more Saquon catching passes as well. I'd like to see a little bit more tight end play as well. I think if they can do that, they should be able to take some of the pressure off of the offensive line. And I think the defense is going to step up. I think Wink is going to do a good job. Here's how I look at this game. I think this game is going to be a very good window for us to see the psyche of the Giants. Because now, all right, so 2-0 and everything was great. Now you just came off a bad loss to Dallas. So I want to see the bounce back, and I think we're going to. Gents by 3. Okay, look, I'll take a 3-point win. I said 6. He says 3. I just want to win. I don't care if it's 1 point.
So I've been trying to talk myself into a Bears win here, and it's hard because all the deficiencies we saw last week. You got a talent like Saquon, and the Bears. If they didn't have those turnovers last week, there's no way they're beating the Texans at home.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at this, I'm going to say there's really no passing game from the Giants, so I'm not necessarily worried about that. I'm going to go ahead and say 24-20, the Giants do win. I want to say the Bears, but I just can't, until they prove. And the 20 is really being generous, with that as well. And so I do think the Giants are going to win this game as well. And hey, it stinks as a Bears fan to predict a loss. But especially when I looked at the schedule to begin the year, I'm like, okay, yep, I checked. Okay, that was a possible win. But if they lose here, it's going to keep going, compounding. I just want to see Justin Fields, and similar to you, I want to see some consistency in the offense. I want to see him be able to drive the field, and we've seen that in spurts, but I want to see that more of that going forward.
Sure. And again, the same thing. I want to see, and that's a great word, consistency. I want to see flow, and that's the other word. The offense is choppy right now. I want to see flow. I want to see smooth offense, and I think if we can do that, we're going to surprise a lot of people. I'm not saying playoffs, but I think we're going to surprise a lot of people. My biggest thing coming into the season was I just want to see a team that competes. So far, I've gotten that. So I think the arrow is clearly pointing in the right direction for the Giants.
Yeah, that is a great point. I mean, the Bears, they struggled, but they competed, and so it's hard to be upset with a win. Um, it's hard to be upset. So the question is then, should the Giants end up losing to the Bears? Where do they go from here?
London to play Green Bay. I mean, look, at the end of the day,
On to Cincinnati.
yeah, right. So at the end of the day, your personnel is what your personnel is.
You're right. Yep.
You could scheme, you can game plan, but if you just don't have the personnel on the roster to pull it off, it doesn't matter. And that's why my feeling is that this roster for the Giants is still a work in process. And they're not done putting together the type of roster that they want to run these systems. So year one, in my opinion, was always about rebuilding the foundation from the inside out, and then seeing what players you have and seeing them in action to say, all right, look, this guy fits what we want to do. This guy's got to go. So they're still doing that, and that's why I'm patient enough. I've seen enough to say I think we got the right guys running the show, and I'm patient enough to say, all right, look, it's year one. It's going to keep getting better.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks again, Carl. Where can everyone find you again?
So everybody can find me on Twitter at FlyGuy12. And also the Giant Zone. You guys can check out our podcast at the Giant Zone 2022 on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Just search Giant Zone. It'll come up. We've got over 30 episodes on there now. And we appreciate all the support. And Andy, love working with you, and always a pleasure collaborating with you.
Absolutely. Once again, this has been an NFL Outdated Cover 2 series, preview of the Bears Giants. Like, subscribe. Thanks, everyone, for the comments, and we'll see what happens. I'll just say bear down. I'll let you have the last word.
Good luck Sunday.
Thanks again.
Go Giants.